Welcome to the Child Free Wealth Podcast, hosted by Bri and Dr. J, Certified Financial Planner. Here we discuss life and finances as it relates to being child-free. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please consult your advisor before implementing any ideas heard on this podcast.
So we did a different episode on why you should quit your job, but you've listened to that and you're like, yeah, well, how do I actually do it? And that's what we're going to dive into here. You know, you've decided you need a change in life for whatever reason. What are the mechanics? What are the finances? What are the structure? And I'll use a client question and I'll throw it to Bri, which is, we were in a Q&A and somebody said, well, you know what? I'm having trouble making ends meet, but my job is just untenable. I just can't do it. How much money do I need to save before I can jump jobs?
In that situation, I would want to know if you have any sort of emergency fund or debt or kind of what your overall picture is. But I would suggest you have at least a 1-month emergency fund, and I would not quit your job without something else lined up. If you're struggling to make ends meet, the reality is you cannot financially quit your job with nothing else lined up. You have to find something else before you take and make that leap.
Yeah. And part of that may be, can you take some sick time, PTO, whatever you call it in your job, and use a day a week to go look for a job? You know, there are ways you can do it. There's different levels. One is, hey, you know, I'm barely making ends meet. And if you're barely making ends meet, we go back to the no baby steps. We get on a budget. We get out of debt. You know, we got to get the basics. You need to have an emergency fund. And you need to have some type of cushion to make that move, because there's a good chance when you change jobs, you're going to have like a little delay in your paychecks, you know, where like you're getting set up with a new place and they're getting the checks. Like, can you go a couple weeks without a check? And if you can't, well, you need to have an emergency fund and set that up. If, on the other hand, you have a fully funded emergency fund, you're out of debt, you're saving and investing towards your future, I'm going, all right, how much of an investment can we make in you and make a jump?
And that's going to be different for everybody as far as the timelines, but sitting down and really taking time to think through that and what, not only what you can financially afford, but also what do you want to be able to afford? That's another thing too. Do you want to have more time? Do you want to do more of a sabbatical type routine and you take a few months off before you even start looking? Do you want to take time off in between? There are some industries where if you leave your job, I know I've had friends in the financial industry. I've never left a finance job, so I don't have personal experience with this, but some people will leave a job and the day you put your notice in is your last day. And then you don't start until whenever you start your new job. So understanding your industry is important, as well of, are you actually even going to have a job once you put your notice in? Or are you going to be able to work that out and keep a paycheck? So that's another thing I would consider.
In an ideal world, if you know, hey, I need to make a career change, I've got some time to plan it. And I like, you know, if I can get kind of 3 to 6 months with a client to work on a plan, you can make a really nice transition to a new job. When I say really nice transition, I mean going to something you truly enjoy, making the right choice, not jumping because you have to and not jumping to just the next thing that comes through the door, but a good plan around it. It takes 3 to 6 months to do that. And here's how I'd ideally do it. You'd be out of debt. We'd have 6 months of emergency fund. And then ideally we'd have 6 months of cash to take you through, and we would do a sabbatical. I love sabbaticals. The way we do sabbaticals here is we take 6 months off. We spend the first 2 months watching Netflix or Hulu. And I'm not kidding. By the way, we don't watch Apple TV because they never have enough shows for 6 months. Okay, come on. Am I wrong, Bri?
You're asking the wrong person. I don't know.
Like, okay, anyone that listening, you can put in the comments, but you know Apple TV does not have 6 months of shows. So, or even 2 months. You take 2 months and you decompress. That is intentionally doing mindless stuff. Because for most adults, you've never actually taken the time off and taken 6 months to just kind of find yourself, to figure out what you want to do. So that first 2 months is just like for your brain to chill. Now, here's what's really going to happen. And I've had folks do this. They do the first 2 months and then they're like, get all their doctor's appointments they haven't done for the past year. Okay, fine. Like, you know, probably should catch up on some of that stuff.
Those take time.
Whatever. But the first 2 months are to just find yourself. The next 2 months are to kind of figure out what do you want to be when you grow up. And I'm a big fan of watching TED Talks. If you haven't gone to a TEDx event yet in your area, you should. What I like about TED Talks or TEDx events is it's random stuff. And it's random stuff that's well done. I'm actually working on a TEDx talk that I'm going to give later this year. And you would be amazed the amount of preparation that goes with it and how much I've had to write. I mean, I've spoken to a large audience, all that, like not an issue, but they have a very well-developed process. So what ends up is they have a very well-developed topic in under 18 minutes of random things. I like spending that 2 months in the middle, just doing and reading and watching random stuff. Then the next 2 months, that's the last 2 of your 6, it's you're going to go try things. This is where you volunteer, you work as an intern, you shadow people. You're like, I have some ideas. I want to try something. Go do it. If you decide, hey, you want to open up a business, that's when you like, go try it. Like, you want to open up a cupcake shop, make some cupcakes. Try things. And then the result is, if you've done that well, you spend 2 months kind of decompressing, 2 months figuring out what you want, 2 months trying it. Then you're like, all right, now I'm going to go find this job I want or open the business or whatever else it is. And the result is you've had a well thought out process that leads to a next chapter of your life versus just jumping job to job.
Hey, Child Free Wealth listeners, it's Bri. I highly encourage you to schedule a Child Free Wealth checkup. During this time, you're going to get a couple of forms to fill out that include your life and financial plan. We'll review them, and then we're going to have a meeting and go through them with you. We're going to give you some advice and things to work on and talk through things to make your finances simpler so your life can be amazing. You can schedule yours by going to our website, childfreewealth.com, and clicking the Schedule Now button. Yeah, because if you're jumping job to job and without taking some of that soul searching, you might just jump into something that you don't like again. And that can be tricky because then I think if you're jumping job to job, you don't take that time for soul searching, you're not going to know whether it's you, like we talked about in the last episode, that's the issue, or if it's the fact that you actually haven't taken time to think through what you wanted. You've just continued to follow other people's paths for you or what seemed like the next best idea, but really wasn't. It's not necessarily well thought out like we're discussing now. It's just we're throwing spaghetti at the wall with your life and not really trying anything. Another thing that I will encourage people to do is when you try these things, write them down. Write down what you're doing and whether or not you would even want to do it again. So write down, what exactly are you? And you can do the same thing with volunteering. Like, what are you doing day to day? Who are you working with? Is it an organization that you'd want to work with again in the future? Or is it something where you like it, but you're not necessarily wanting to do it every day? Something that can be molded. And usually many people will say, hey, I can't do that. Well, yes, you can. You can take and mold a lot of these skills and abilities and use them in different ways to find something that fits you.
Yeah, and journaling is a great way to do that. I'm not a big journaler, but I had somebody hit a great idea. He says, look, I'm just going to throw some notes into AI every day. And he's just throwing in notes of like, I watched this TED Talk. I didn't like this. I thought about this. And the fun part of this is if you just throw it all in a Word document or something, whatever it is, and then you ask AI, hey, what are the themes here? It can be a thinking partner where you're like, oh, I did not think of that. Where you can say to AI, okay, this is what I just went through for the past month and a half. This is what I've liked, what I haven't. What are the themes and what would be an ideal career? Now, by the way, it's AI, who knows? It'll come up with something random, but it may come up with, if you say, give me 5 ideas, it might have 2 that you have not thought of where you can chase it down. It's also great to work with a coach or a planner, somebody like us. I mean, you can get professionals to do it, but if you want to just make AI your coach and have it, help you keep track and do that. You can even do the voice notes. It can listen to your voice. It can go through all that. And now you have a thinking partner of like, well, what do I want to do? Because in many cases, it's kind of a lack of imagination of like, what is my next step that people are worried about? And I'm like, you'll figure it out. I promise you'll figure it out. It will come to you. You just haven't had a moment to stop and think about it.
Yeah. And I love that idea of dropping it in AI or anything. I personally use a spreadsheet when it comes to my volunteer stuff. And that way I can see like, do I even like this again? But having those notes there, you can read through them yourself too and just remind yourself, that sounds like a great idea. It actually was not, based off of the note that I have from last time. Using notes, using data. I think many of us now just forget that we can write things down and refer back to it. and check it and go through. I love the idea of the thinking partner, whether it is AI or a person. I will say I'm kind of anti-AI for thinking partner stuff. I think it can be a base level, but I'm much more of human connection is super important. And having those conversations can be a great way to go about things. That's my little bias there and anti-AI part of me.
Well, I mean, you don't have to pick, by the way. I mean, it's interesting. We work with a lot of clients and we'll take about 6 months to work through this plan and we'll work through it. We'll be their thinking partner and we'll help them out. And I get these random emails and I'm like, ooh, we're making progress. You get used to it. It depends on your style. But the point is, it's a process. And it's not just because here's what's going to happen. You quit your job, you go on a sabbatical, you do whatever. Somebody from your existing network or whatever is probably going to reach out and go, hey, I have an opportunity. And I'm like, hold up. Don't just say yes to that. Because it can be very tempting to say yes because you're like, I'm broke. I don't have a job. And I'm like, hold up. We have a plan. We're going through a step. You can choose that at the end, but only after you've done some reflection.
Yeah. Taking time. I really like the idea of if you get a message like that, read it and then close it. Don't look at it again for a week. And if you forget about it, probably not the thing. If you keep thinking about it and going, wow, that would be really interesting, it might be something to explore further, but just take and ignore it for a little bit and see if it keeps coming back to you. Because there are a lot of things where if we see it and we act on it right away, great idea in the moment, but it might not be a great idea long-term. And I believe that's part of how we get stuck in these going from one thing we don't enjoy to the next thing we don't enjoy.
Absolutely. And let's swing through some mechanics. So one of the things people often talk about is I can't take a sabbatical or I can't switch jobs because of healthcare. And the first thing you need to remember is the healthcare system in the US was designed to retain employees. So it was designed as an employee benefit that would make people stuck to their jobs. So if you're like, hey, I can't change jobs because of healthcare, it won. Like it's doing its job. Couple things to think about here. One, if you know you're going to switch jobs, I like getting all your preventative maintenance stuff done in advance. Which, I mean, you know what I'm talking about. Like, you got to go get your teeth cleaned. You got to go to the physicals. You got to get your meds refilled, all that. You can do that while you have the job. Then we go to sabbatical. You have two choices. One, you can do COBRA, which means you continue the current plan. You pay extra. It's going to be 101% of the premium. It's going to be expensive, but you get to stay on your same plan. Or two, you go on the ACA plan. Now, the bonus of the ACA plan is you're going to go and say, hey, I'm unemployed for this 6-month period. You probably will get some type of tax break for it. They give you a little bit off the plan and you can get your healthcare through there and you're covered. I never want people to go without health insurance. So because things happen, just random things, but you can have a plan for healthcare that works.
Hey, Child Free Wealth listeners, it's Bri. If you haven't already signed up for our newsletter, be sure to get on it, where each week we send out information regarding what's going on in the world of child-free life and finances. You can sign up by finding the link in our description. Yeah, healthcare just makes me ick as a whole. But the idea of tying it to the employer is something that pops up so frequently for people. And if you want to quote for you, go on, just Google healthcare.gov and you can look and check to see what might the policy be like for you. There are many options on there where it'll say, hey, this is what you're going to pay in premiums. This is the most you're going to pay. Go through having those conversations. You're not going to be able to get some of the top plans going on there. You might have to go to health insurance broker. But usually if you're looking at a gold plan, that's what we tend to recommend for many of our clients is look at a gold plan. It might be a lot more affordable than you might imagine or think. And so I don't want it to be a sticking point.
The other one, people ask me, well, if I'm unemployed, can I get disability insurance? No, disability insurance only covers you when you have a job. Can I collect unemployment? Only if you're fired. And we don't want to do that.
But I don't want to say you don't want to be fired. If you are actually, we have done this before. If you are in a point where you can be laid off.
That's different than fired.
Yes, I know. But at least the same train of thought of you're leaving not necessarily because you put your notice in. If you can get that, it might not be a bad option to take it.
Yeah, I have a lot of folks that in the tech world, at least last year, they were doing layoffs in their company, and they went to their boss and like, "Hey, next time you do a layoff, put my name in." And it sounds really weird, but the boss is like, "That's awesome because I don't have to pick somebody." Like, no, seriously,
It is.
And some of them been able to get like 3 to 6 months of severance. They might be getting healthcare for a period of time. Sometimes like career placement assistance. That's awesome. And what I like about it, it gives you a kick in the butt because you're like, I know I need to change a job, and I'm like, okay, go tell your boss that you'll take the severance whenever that turn is. And it might be next month, it might be in 6 months, whatever else it is. And it's kind of a good push. Now, if you're single, I'm going to want you to have a good sized emergency fund and enough for your expenses for 6 months before you switch jobs. So you're really talking about a year of expenses saved up. If you're in a couple, we're a big fan of the gardener and the rose approach, where one is taking turns as the gardener, providing support, and as the rose, growing. Now, the way I like to do this with couples, and this is very, very important, is you need to have the discussion about it. Usually the gardener will know when the rose needs to do it and vice versa. But I want you to set a plan. And the way I like to do it is to set a timeline. So you say, okay, I'm going to go figure out who I am. I'm going to go figure out what I want to do, figure out if moving's an option. And I'm going to do that for the next 5 years, maybe 7 years, maybe 3 years. It's not exact. 5 tends to be a good number for most people because really our brains don't think much past 5 years. And at the end of those 5 years, we're going to switch roles. So if I'm the rose, I'm going to be the gardener. And what happens is because of that conscious choice and that conscious switch, people are more likely to actually follow through with this. And it's okay as the rose to be a little bit selfish and focus on yourself because you're going to take turns.
Yeah. And it might feel weird being the rose at first and kind of feel a little bit, especially if you're somebody who's used to caring for others, feel a little bit tricky. But eventually you get used to the feeling and you can take it and kind of take it with, I'm not going to say no guilt, but less guilt usually. And people will support you and be happy, especially if you're in a couple, because it can definitely improve your relationship, improve your life. And even a soloist, I will say soloists, I've seen many of them who have made changes and maybe, they don't have a partner calling those changes out and how it's improved their life, but they have friends or family who's made a comment of how much happier they seem. And they come and report back to us that people are saying these things and they feel so good about it.
Yeah. And for the gardener and rose people, I want you to set boundaries of how far this can go. So for example, is the rose allowed to pick a job cross country? So my wife got offered a job 1,200 miles away, packed up the dogs and the cat, and we went. She's the rose right now, and we just do that. I mean, fortunately, we're child free. So the biggest issue was getting the 2 mastiffs at the time in the back of a Prius, which was hilarious. You got to see that running down the highway. But we just did it. In other people, it might be, hey, you're the rose. You can follow whatever you want for career, but we can't move. That's fine. But what I want you to do, especially if you're solo, you got a choice. I want you to question where you are just as much as the job. People are like, well, I can't take a lower paying job because, and I'm like, why? And they go, well, because my home payment is this. And I'm like, well, how about you sell the house? And they're like, well, can I do that? And I'm like,
yes,
well, let's see. If you downsize the house and did a job you enjoy, would you be happier? And they go, oh, absolutely. Well, then let's do that. And they're like, but nobody does that. And I'm like, and?
Yeah. You are welcome to live the life that you want, not other people want. And it's okay to pack up and move. And, I have told numerous people this is a few years ago, my wife and I, we were looking at buying a house. We were in the process of doing all of that. And then she came home and said, I can't do this anymore. We need to move. That was a Tuesday night. Thursday, we were on a plane. Friday, we had a place picked out. We went back for 2 months, gave our notice, and then moved. And you can do those things. People always laugh. They're like, that's like a TV show. You just move so quickly. Yeah, it is. But it's okay to take and make those changes if they're helpful for your life.
Yeah. And it's part of the reason why I like renting. The other thing is I like it as an exercise for like seeing how far your brain goes. If you're saying, look, I hate the weather. So right now we're in Tennessee and it's like 100 degrees out and like super humid, like to the point where like people aren't even going to the pool anymore. Like it's one of those. If that weather doesn't make it for you, then move. Some people it's the snow, some people whatever else it is. Maybe it's for politics. I don't know. We've been doing a lot of that lately. What would happen if I did? And it's interesting. I had somebody who was like, I can do XYZ job remotely. What would happen if I moved to Costa Rica or some random island? I'm like, well, your cost of living would go down considerably. But if you're getting a US paid remote job, you're making a lot of money and living in the islands. Like, yeah, I can do that. What happens is often we are just kind of stuck in the way we've always done it. I make this amount of money. I own this type of house. I own this type of car. This is the lifestyle I'm living. And then I go, yeah, but are you happy? So one of the kind of steps in the how you do it is to question everything. That's
hard. That is a hard spot to be in, but so incredibly important.
It's hard, but it's also freeing once you get it. Like you're going to have a little analysis paralysis. Like I have too many choices. What would you do if you could do anything? What do you want to be when you grow up? What would you do? People are like, well, I'd go back to school. Okay, great. Let's figure out a plan for that. Or I would do X, Y, Z. I don't know why. We have a lot of people want to be librarians. Cool. Librarians don't make a lot of money. Are you okay lowering your standard of living? Like moving someplace a little bit cheaper to do that. You're like, yeah, I would. I'm like, okay, let's do that. And it's amazing how many times people step off that gerbil wheel. That gerbil wheel is just like, I got to buy more, got to buy more, got to buy more. And they're like, I don't have to take the fancy trips anymore and all the vacations because I like my job and I like my life. It's hard to explain until you've lived it.
And there's another point about there too, where you're talking about the vacations and all those things. When you enjoy your everyday life more, we see a lot of people spending less money, not intentionally. It just naturally happens of they're not necessarily going out and getting takeout because they're exhausted from a long day of work that they don't really enjoy. They're saying, no, I want to cook things at home. I want to try new things. Or they're just making different choices. They're not having to go on those vacations and spend a bunch of money to make themselves feel better about going back to work. Overall, sometimes living expenses just go down because you can enjoy everyday life and feel really fulfilled in those things.
Yeah. And the whole point is to question everything to figure out what makes you happy. And I think that's the hard part is people have never stopped and asked that question. Like, what do I actually enjoy? What do I want to do? And usually what'll happen is money will get in the way. And I'm like, okay, you got to figure out what job you'll do without the money, and then we'll figure out how to pay. And people are like, well, but I might pick a job that I'm unhappy that I'm not going to be able to make ends meet. And I'm like, yeah, but you'll be happy. And they're like, well, but how do I do that? And your brain gets stuck. And this is where work with somebody to push you can help. But I think the challenge is, you have to kind of trust the process and work it through. I think the other one that some folks look at is, hey, if I'm going to switch jobs, do I take a little vacation? We have another episode I recorded with somebody talking about retiring often. So I take a little month off in between. Cool. You want to do that? You want to make part of your plan? Awesome. Whatever you want to do, because ultimately, as a child-free person, you get to invest in you and you get to invest in your happiness. We're always talking about how do we make your finances simple so your life can be amazing. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about changing jobs.
It's funny because people will often hear we're financial planners and we are so focused on money. But the reality is we're not. We are very much life-focused financial planners. And yes, money matters to a certain extent, but you can have all the money in the world and not be happy. And so if you're continuing to chase money over enjoyment in everyday life, it might be time to stop and evaluate some things and go, do I need to adjust? I was listening to a podcast earlier from a funeral director, actually, and it was the shorter the contract, the longer the driveway. And what she was saying was the shorter the funeral contract, meaning the fewer things they picked, the longer their driveway was going to be because they spent their entire life chasing money instead of chasing the things that they enjoy and making connections with people and doing all of that. And I thought that was such an interesting way to look at things. And I mean, sure, she's seen it as a funeral director and seeing all of those people, but that's why we always say simplify your finances so you can live an amazing life, is because money shouldn't be the end all be all. Enjoying your everyday life is substantially more important.
Yeah. And by the way, I do have to talk about finances a little bit here. So if you're going to quit your job, you want to look at timing and see if anything matters. So I had somebody who was going to take a sabbatical and actually hike the Appalachian Trail, which is really cool. And then we figured out, if you wait 2 months, you get like $75,000 in bonus. guess what? You wait 2 months. Like, just if you're 401k, you're going to have a cliff vest. You have stock options coming. You have a bonus. But then the day after that, you got to go. Because what'll happen is, like, if you have a bonus, let's say you get one every 6 months. Oh, I got my bonus. And you wait another 2 months. You're like, well, the next one's only 4 months away. Like, you don't want to get trapped, but you don't want to be silly about it. If there is, here's a nice, logical place to leave when I get X, Y, and Z, do it. And then people are like, well, but I feel bad to my employer because, and I'm like, oh, no. They paid you that money because of the work you did. Yeah, they're trying to keep you. But you know what? You could just go and take the money.
You could absolutely go and take the money. And I love pointing out whether it's leaving your job and intending to go to a new job and paying attention to that timing, or it's just retiring in general, is know the important dates there, because sometimes a few weeks, a few months can make a huge difference, but it's also the delicate balance of getting chained to those golden handcuffs, which many people have. And I've heard more and more people recently come and say, I have the golden handcuffs. I know I have the golden handcuffs and I want to get out, but I don't know what to do. We can go through and sit down and make a plan with you to actually get out and do it in a way that supports you financially, but also helps you feel good about that next chapter of life. Because when you're doing it on your own, let's be honest, there's in everything, there can be things that you just don't know. We call them the unknown unknowns many times. So having somebody to walk through that with you, ask questions that maybe you haven't considered or thought about, and going through and figuring out, what does that look like? What is that plan? When we're doing our plans with clients, we'll often discuss it 1 month, and then we'll let them think about it. And then we'll talk again about it the next month and really say, like, okay, since our last conversation, how have things been feeling for you? Are they a yes? You want to go with that plan? Do you maybe need to change things? And then let's take action on some of these steps. Let's not keep pushing it down. We can always change later after we've taken action and said, tried that, really wasn't what we were hoping for or looking for. That's okay. But setting that plan up and giving yourself a timeline of, by this date, I'm going to make this change, is incredibly important to actually making that change. Hey, Child Free Wealth listeners, it's Bri. If you haven't already signed up for our newsletter, be sure to get on it, where each week we send out information regarding what's going on in the world of child-free life and finances. You can sign up by finding the link in our description.
Yeah, the whole point is you're taking one step after the other. The other one I want you to just be aware of, when you do take that step and you are going to quit, every once in a while they'll try to keep you. So, like, I always prepare people for this conversation, which is like, I've decided I'm quitting, I give my notice, and there's one of two things happen. Either they walk you out that day, which does happen. Let's just be transparent on that, especially in certain, regulatory issues, financial world, thing like that. They'll just kind of, all right, that's your last day. Or there's others where, like, well, can't you stay? I want you to be prepared for that. And usually what I'll go with is like, look, if they want to extend you by a month and give you a bunch of money and you're happy with that, fine. Don't get stuck into like, well, if I give you extra raise, will you stay another, no, we're leaving. The other thing I have had some folks do is say, all right, I'm out, but you know what? I'll consult for you, make a little bit of money. By the way, I'm going to charge them like double what I'm paid now and work 10 hours or, just a kind of little thing while you're doing it. Great. But you have to be on the way out. At the end, I'm going to encourage you. This is one of those where having some help can be good for you. It could be a friend. It could be a professional. It could be whatever else it is. But it's someone who can kick you in the butt when you get worried or you kind of fall back. We have it all the time. People are like, I really want to do this. I'm like, great. And I'll check by. I'm like, well, I haven't given my notice yet. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to give it tonight. And I've even actually helped people write the email. It's a friendly thing. But it's someone who can lean in and go, all right, let's do this. And you know what? Once it's done, you'll be happy. It's just taking those first steps that are hard.
If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a rating or review. We'd love to keep the conversation going. Please let us know your thoughts wherever comments are available, or email us at media@childfreewealth.com. To stay up to date, find and follow Child Free Wealth on social media. If you're interested in working with us, learn more by visiting our website, childfreewealth.com. We'll see you next time.